Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're going to get started. Welcome to the Advancing and Measuring Well-Being for Youth and Young Adults Youth Thrive Survey webinar. My name is Lisa Primus. I am a Senior Associate at the Center for the Study of Social Policy and will be facilitating the webinar today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all here. During this webinar, we invite you to connect and share ideas. Our presentation will begin shortly, but first, some important reminders. The webinar is being recorded and will be available after the presentation. Due to the number of people online, all attendees are in listen-only mode. You can type questions at any time using the question box in your control panel. To signal to us that you want to ask a question, click on the hand icon in your control panel and we will unmute you. The purpose of today's webinar is to provide an overview of the Youth Thrive Survey, a newly released instrument available for the field that measures positive constructs of well-being. We will demonstrate features of the survey platform, including data and reporting, and provide you with an opportunity to ask questions and engage ideas with other jurisdictions that are exploring implementation of the survey. I am very happy to be joined today with our team from Metis Associates, who has been our close partner and collaborator in developing this survey. And it is my great pleasure to present to you our two presenters for the day. Susan Notkin, who is the Senior Vice President at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. She oversees our work in systems reform, specifically focusing on changing child welfare, juvenile justice, and youth homelessness policy and practice. And Susan also leads our Youth Thrive initiative. And our other great presenter is Erica, who is a Senior Research Associate at Metis Associates. Metis has been our partner again in doing this work. We began working together to develop and validate the survey instrument, and most recently, we've collaborated to build the system that Erica will be demonstrating today. Welcome to Susan and Erica. I'm going to turn it over to Susan, who is going to kick us off by giving a quick overview of the Youth Thrive framework.
Thanks, Lisa, and good afternoon to everybody. And I want to add my welcome to CSSP's official launch of the new Youth Thrive self-assessment instrument. We're really delighted that so many of you are able to be with us today, and that your presence today and also the volume of inquiries we've already received confirms to us that this instrument is a much needed and much anticipated addition to the youth serving field's ability to track positive indicators of youth well-being. Just in the past 2 weeks, 35 organizations, systems, and individuals from 20 different states have registered for the survey. And all you have to do is go to the CSSP website, which you see a little visual right here, and you too can register to use the survey. For those of you who don't know us, CSSP is a national nonprofit policy organization that connects community action, public system reform, and policy change to create a fair and just society in which all children and families can thrive. To put it simply, we believe that all children and families should have what they need to thrive. And to realize that vision, we work to ensure that communities are inclusive and offer support to the families living there, that public systems provide the resources and opportunities sought and needed by families, and that public policies create more equitable opportunities and outcomes for all children, youth, and families. We work in over 30 states, translating ideas into action, and have a long history of working on child welfare and other human service system reform. Around 6 years ago, CSSP developed our Youth Thrive Protective and Promotive Factors framework based on what the research told us that all young people needed, all young people, regardless of circumstances, needed in order to thrive. We began by conducting a synthesis of the research on adolescent brain development, the impact of trauma on that development, and the research on resiliency and positive youth development. And that research and that synthesis led us to call out the 5 protective and promotive factors that you see in the upper left the upper left circle, I should say, and that for those protective and promotive factors, which are shown by the research to help mitigate risk and promote youth well-being. With that framework in hand, we then sought out and began working with public and private child welfare, juvenile justice, and homelessness service agencies who were committed to finding a new way to better serve the youth in their systems. Partnering with 7 jurisdictions, we're supporting these agencies in using the Youth Thrive Protective and Promotive Framework as a lens through which to evaluate and change as needed the policies and practices that impact young people's lives and outcomes. Over the years, in conversations, we have found ourselves being asked repeatedly for some way to assess the presence and relative strength of a young person's protective and promotive factors. How do you do that? You say we want to increase it. How do we know whether in fact, first of all, whether in fact a young person's protective and promotive factors are strong or need strengthening? And it was that request from the field that led us to develop the instrument that we're excited to tell you about today. I want to acknowledge and thank our CSSP staff who worked tirelessly on this for the past 2 years, Lisa Primus and Charlene Harper Brown, and our valuation partners from Medicine Associates, Erica Bjorky, Fran Shore, Michael Scuolo, Bob Harrington, and Marina Levitola. And you're going to be hearing from Erica in just a minute. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan. So the Youth Thrive survey, a little bit about the survey. It's a valid youth self-report instrument, and it was designed with great input from youth and young adults that measures the presence, strengths, and growth of the Youth Thrive protective and promotive factors that Susan just mentioned. And these protective and promotive factors, they've been identified in the research literature to advance healthy development and well-being, as well as mitigate the impacts of trauma and negative life experiences. The Youth Thrive survey can be used by any system, any organization, or any individual working with youth and young adults ages 12 to 26. The survey itself is composed of 5 sections, one for each one of the protective and promotive factors. Each section includes about 10 to 17 statements, and using a Likert type scale, respondents indicate the extent to which each statement describes them. The survey also includes an 11-question demographic section that enables organizations, systems, or individuals and workers to understand the background characteristics of the youth and young adults and the opportunity to disaggregate data by subgroup. The estimated time to take the survey is less than 15 minutes. And to view the complete survey, please look at attachment 1 in your user manual that's available on the CSSP website. What is most exciting and unique about the Youth Thrive survey is that it measures positive constructs and that it can be used in a variety of ways. The Youth Thrive survey can be used as an assessment instrument to identify strengths and areas that are in need of strengthening in order to inform case planning with youth and young adults. It can be used as an evaluation instrument to measure the effectiveness of interventions or other programs, as well as a continuous quality improvement instrument to measure and monitor progress, inform policy and practice decisions, and measure well-being outcomes for youth and young adults. CSSP is underwriting the cost through October of 2019. After that, there will likely be a small administrative fee, and that fee is, purely for data cleanup and data storage. We will do our best to ensure that the costs are minimal. And another exciting thing about the Youth Thrive survey is the platform that Erica will be providing you an overview of. And that platform not only makes the survey, easily accessible to all, but also provides us with an opportunity to be able to collect large sets of data so that we are able to norm the data and improve how this survey can be used and how the results can be compared to young people across the U.S. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica, who is going to walk through the survey platform and explain all of the features.
Thank you, Lisa, for laying that excellent foundation for this demo. So today, I'm going to be walking you through the system, the nuts and bolts of getting started using the survey, how you actually administer the survey with young people, and then also getting data out of the survey, both at an individual level and at the aggregate. So if we head over to, there we go. Okay, so for those of you, I realize that a number of organizations have already registered. Thank you very much for doing that. For those of you who are interested in registering and have not yet had a chance to do so, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about that. To register for the survey, you'll go to the CSSP website, specifically the Youth Thrive survey, webpage, which is, let's see, if you go to our work, then go to Youth Thrive. We'll just scroll down to the bottom here, and it'll pull up a window about Youth Thrive, and then you go to Survey Instrument all the way here on the right. And from here, you'll see that there are two options to register. First, you can register as an organization on the left here, or you can register as an independent user here on the right. Organizations, by and large, are very strongly encouraged to register as organizations, not as independent users. There are a number of reasons for this. First of all, for you as an organization, there's a really strong benefit to being able to see the data across all the caseworkers, all of the staff who are using the survey with young people. You can roll up results across staff. You can roll up results across all the young people that your organization serves. There is continuity also if you have a staff person leave. That young person's data, who is taking the survey under that staff person, their data will stay in the system. So you as an organizational administrator or another staff person will still be able to access that data and use that to inform your work with young people going forward, even though the original caseworker is no longer with the organization. So I'll start first with organizational registration. So click here, and it's just a very simple registration page. Just enter, now this is the person who should be doing this is an organizational admin, so someone who's going to be overseeing use of the survey across all the staff. So what that person would do is enter their first name, their last name, their email address, the state that they're in. Are you a Youth Thrive site? If you are a Youth Thrive site, then you are, I think, aware that you are, and you would click yes. You would then select your jurisdiction and then the organization with which you are affiliated within that jurisdiction. If not, then you would just select no, and you would not be prompted to answer those questions. Enter your organization name, and then create a username and password. Once you do that, you're going to be prompted to fill out an organizational profile, and that information is going to provide CSSP with additional information about, who's using this instrument across the country. For what purpose are you using it? With what types of young people are you using it? How often do you plan on administering it? It just gives a lot of information to CSSP about how the survey is being used, and also information about what kinds of needs there are out there about the survey. So I'm going to log in as a user right now just to show you what that looks like really quickly. So organizational profile, once you fill it out, will be here at the top of the main menu, and it's just the contact information for the organizational admin, a question about the population of young people that you plan on using the survey with. Could be all youth and young adults within a specific age bracket, systems involved, not systems involved, quite a few options here. how you plan to use the survey for assessment purposes, for evaluation purposes, and or for continuous quality improvement purposes. How often you plan on administering the survey. The recommendation, as you'll see in the manual, is every 3 to 6 months. But again, this is a new instrument, and there's no prescribed frequency with which the survey should be administered. So this is, very much a question for CSSP to learn from the organizations as well. And this can be changed also in the future if you decide that your organization needs to administer more frequently or less frequently. And then at the very end, are you interested in staying connected? And if so, how? So that is how you register as an organization. If you're a solo practitioner, or let's say you work for an organization, you want to use a survey, but your organization just isn't interested, you do have the option to register as an independent user. And so, very similar type of form that you fill out here. If you find that your organization does become interested in using it later on, you can contact CSSP and we'll work together to roll those data up into a single account so that the organizational admin can access and roll up data across all staff and all young people within that organization. So with that, let's go back to the system. So once you've registered, once you've registered as an organization, the next step will be to enter users, so people who are actually going to be administering the survey with young people. To do that, go down to user management. The first time you go to this page, the only line you'll see is the top line here, which will be you, the organizational admin. And from here, to add other caseworkers or to add other organizational administrators who should have the same types of permissions to access the system that you do, you would click Add New User, and then very simply just fill out this form, create a username and a password. The organization name, if you're an organization, it'll just be a locked field, so you don't have to worry about that. And then from here, you'll select the user role. You can be, like I mentioned, it can be an administrator, like the person, like the role is of the person who is getting this all started for their organization, or it can be an org user, which is a caseworker. So I'd like to, I should mention too, I think we received a question about the use of the survey in schools, and so I think the term organization can be applied more broadly. So it can also be applied to a school, or users can be not just caseworkers, but also other staff in the school who might use a survey, teachers, and whatnot. So I think those terms can be used broadly.
There is one question related to this exact topic, so we're just going to take a quick second. And Katie, we are going to unmute you so that you can ask your question.
I'm having a little difficulty.
Go ahead, Katie. You can ask your question.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Hi there, Katie from Nevada, Independent Living Program Specialist. I actually just set up as the statewide administrator. I'm just wondering how I would add in organizational admins.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think we're going to switch back to the PowerPoint really quick, because there's a table that describes the level of access to the YouThrive survey data. Katie, you said that you're set up as a state admin?
Yes, correct.
Currently? Okay, great. So for those of you, just to provide a little bit of context, state administrators are those who are either kind of at the state level for their YouThrive jurisdictions, or you've already reached out to CSSP and set up that kind of arrangement where you can see data across organizations within your state. Katie, the best way to do that, what I would recommend is for other organizations that you oversee or that are working with you, have them register independently as organizations within your state, and they will automatically be rolled up into what you are seeing, and all their data from their young people will be rolled up into what you're seeing.
So if I'm understanding correctly, anybody who registers as an organizational admin within Nevada will fall under my umbrella, if that makes any sense.
Correct, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. So I think that's a good transition really quick into this table. So there are 4 levels of access to the survey. At the CSSP level, CSSP can access all de-identified survey data. State administrators can access all survey data for users in their state, for young people in their state. As an organizational admin, you can access all survey data for young people and staff within your organization or school. And caseworkers can access all survey data for young people on their caseload. And this is taken right from the manual, so don't worry about copying it all down right away. So we'll jump back to the system. And okay, so we were at adding new users. So let's say you're an organizational admin, you're adding a user, pretty straightforward here. The 2 things I want to point out. I mentioned before that you might have caseworkers or staff who leave your organization. That's why this bottom field here, approved, is important. When you set up a user to administer the survey, you'll want to check off that they are approved. If they leave, what you would do is just simply uncheck it, so their data stay, but they no longer would have access to these data. It's a way of keeping the young people's responses secure. The other thing you'll want to see, let's go back to user management and just go into a user. There's this button here at the bottom of an already entered user called Unlock User. As an organizational admin, it'll be your role to unlock any users who lock themselves out of the system by entering the incorrect username or password, or an incorrect password, more than 6 times. So if you're a state administrator, trust me, you don't want that job for all staff or all organizations in your state. So that's why it's set up as two different types of access. So that is user management. Once you have your users set up, you can then begin the work of having your staff, or you administer the survey. To do that, you go back to the login screen. So I'm just going to log out. And this is where you can also register a survey user. So at the very bottom, it says register a survey user here. You would enter the state that they're in, the organization that you belong to, and create a username, password, and their email address. Now, a couple of words about usernames and logins in general. You'll want to make sure that the usernames do not reveal the identity of the young person whatsoever. So if we have, my colleague here, Bob Harrington, you don't want his username to be Bob Harrington. You don't want it to have his birthday. You don't want to have his social security number. The reason for that being any data download that comes out of the system, or any way that you view the data at an individual level by anyone at the state, anyone at CSSP, that username will be tied to the results. So you want to come up with a username with the young person that is not going to be revealing of their identity at all. Which also means that you'll want to do a very good job of tracking the usernames and the email addresses. So locally for the staff or for the organizational admin, keeping a running list of who those users are and what their usernames are and what their email addresses are. You don't have to include passwords because there is back in the login page, there is a forgot your password option. So if a young person, you have the username, you have the email address, don't remember what the password is, well, they can have that password emailed to them, but that's why you'll want to make sure you have their email address on file so that you know which email account they use to sign up for, or which email account is associated with the survey account that you created for them. Once a survey user is registered, once you've done that work for them, then they can go in and complete the survey. So wait, I'm going to type it right here. So I have a survey user. Let's go. Let's see here, and I can show you the survey. Okay, great. So when a young person now logs into the survey, the first page they will always see at the beginning, no matter if they've taken it once or if they've taken it multiple times before, is this consent page. The consent page here provides just a really quick overview of what the survey is. It talks about how it's voluntary in nature, that it's not a test, and who has access to their data. It provides contact information, and then they'll have to actively agree or disagree to take the survey. If they agree, they will then be prompted to select their worker ID. So this is the ID of the caseworker whom they're working with whom they're taking the survey. So we'll select that, and then from here, keep going. We'll take you into the survey itself. The first page of the survey is a series of demographic questions, 11 of them, and I'm just going to fill that out really quickly so that we can proceed. All of these questions are required. Anything beyond here is not required. What did I put here? Idaho. So after the demographic questions, you'll then have a series of 5 pages, one for each protective and promotive factor. So here you have the questions on youth resilience, or the statements rather, statements on the left, Likert type scale across the top. I'll keep going. These are all, as you can see, none of them are required, but young people are very strongly encouraged to complete it as much as possible, because that'll just make the results stronger and more usable. Go all the way to the end. Once they've reached the end of the survey, they'll click here to complete and submit the survey. And from here, you'll have the opportunity to print the survey result right away, so that you can have that discussion, or a staff person can have an immediate discussion with the young person if they want about the survey that they just took. Also to print it out and put that survey in a paper file if you keep paper files on your young people. So you just click print survey results, and that'll pull up a separate window with the scores for each of the questions, as well as each of the subsections, which we'll take a closer look at next. So once you've administered surveys, you can then go back into the system and pull the data out. And this is where it gets fun. So let me log back in as an organizational user. This type of access would be the same for a staff person as well. So you go to survey menu. And from the survey menu, you'll see a list. If you were an organizational user or an organizational admin, you'll see a list of all the surveys completed with any staff person in your organization. If you're an organizational user, so if you're a staff person, then you'll see a list of surveys completed just for the young people on your caseload. You'll have a couple options here for the completed surveys. If you want to view let me just go back here really quick. If you want to view a completed survey, here, let me just back up really quick. So in the survey menu, you have a list of all the completed surveys. The organization name, will be the same if you're all from within the same organization. The ID of the worker who administered the survey with a young person, the survey taker ID, and the date that the survey was completed. To view the results, you have 2 options. If you view the survey here using that button, you can actually see the survey itself and how the young person responded to each of the questions throughout the survey. If you want to view the result, which is what you saw at the very end of the survey when we were looking at the survey from the young person's point of view, you click view results, and that'll take you to this page, which has just the protective and promotive factors. And from here, you can see the choice score. So this corresponds to the Likert type scale. 1 is not at all like me, 5 is very much like me. And you also have an average, a mean for each of the subsections that you can see for this young person. Youth resilience, the average score across all the questions was 3.7. Social connections, the average score was 4.47, and so on. And this is useful if you want to see just sort of at a glance, in which protective and promotive factors is this young person particularly strong, and in which areas do I think he or she might need some support. And you can also look at specific questions. If there's specific questions that would be flags to you as a caseworker, let's say there's one down here, I feel that no one loves me. If you want to know the answer to that particular question, you can just scroll down easily and see what it is. I should note too that any negative items, these are mostly positive, but there are a few negative items thrown in there in part for quality control purposes. But these are actually reverse scored. So a negative item, I feel that no one loves me. If they say not at all like me, that's actually a 5, not a 1. And at the very top, you have some, the information about the young person, the work ID, the survey taker, so it's always labeled. Okay. Now, so that's how you view results, individual survey results for young people, individual surveys. The next thing you can do is run reports. This is where you get to query the data. This is the report menu. I'm going to start actually at the bottom, because this is at the bottom we have the simplest report, and we'll kind of go up in complexity from there. So at the very bottom, we have the Youth Thrive Protective and Promotive Factors Summary and Demographic Breakdown. If I click on that, we'll come to a page where we have a report for each of the protective and promotive factors. So if we click on Youth Resilience, we'll get a summary report with all, or I think most of the reports. You'll be able to select a date parameter. So if you want to see all the surveys completed within a year, you just enter the beginning and the end of the year. If you know that you completed all the surveys within a particular week, then you can limit it even further. So for now, just because I don't have a lot of data, let's look at the surveys completed in November. So for this particular report, and for all the protective and promotive factor reports, the first page you'll see here is a summary of, you'll get a summary of the average responses and as well as the total score for each of the statements that fall within this protective and promotive factor, as well as a total and average score for the entire section. On the second page of this report, you'll have a breakdown by demographic characteristics. So here you'll see the breakdown by gender, by age, by living arrangement, by foster care status, by involvement in the juvenile justice system, and by race and ethnicity. And that's the same kind of report that you would have for each of the protective and promotive factors. Another type of report you can get, individual scores over time. This is an individual level report, the name. So let's run it for November again. Okay, so you'll see for this report, for any young person who's completed at least one survey, or sorry, at least 2 surveys within the selected time period, you'll be able to take a look at this report and see how their scores have changed over time, if at all, for each of the protective and promotive factors. So you'll see that this is broken down by young person. So we have the various survey taker IDs here in the blue bars, and then beneath each one you have the date that they completed the survey, and then the mean score for each of the sections for that particular survey administration. Now, at the organizational level, if you're an organizational admin, you can restrict this report for specific caseworkers if that's something that's useful to you. So let's say I wanted to look at just this caseworker, see the report. Here's the young person that this particular caseworker has worked with and administered the survey with during this time period. Similarly, if you wanted to look at only specific young people, you could restrict it that way too, by using this survey taker ID field. Just going to run this again really quick. The other thing that I didn't point out before is that all of these reports can be exported into a variety of file formats. So if you want to export as a PDF, you can do that here. Just click this little floppy disk button, which those of us who know what floppy disks are, it's kind of funny that they've kept that icon through all these years. But you can export as a PDF. You can export as an Excel file. This in particular can be useful if you want to do additional graphing beyond what's already available in the system. You can export it this way and manipulate it in other ways that are useful to you. Okay, let's look at comparing total and average scores from pre to post. This is another sort of change over time report, but this one rolls up all the results into an aggregate. I'm going to select state parameters here, and you'll see that for young people who completed the survey at least twice within the selected time period, this will show the average score at their first administration and the average score at the last administration, regardless of whether or not they completed twice or 4 times. It's the first and the last. The total number of survey takers is shown at the very bottom. The next one to take a look at, let's look at the cross-demographic analysis of average scores. This is a really neat report because it allows you to look at data for a very specific segment of the young people that you serve. So let's try an example. Let's say that you wanted to, you're interested in looking at data for females who are currently in foster care versus females who were formerly in foster care. You do here, you create your 2 groups using these drop-down menus. So for first, you could select gender, female, and then continuing to build this group, foster care involvement, currently in foster care. And then for your second group, I build that out as well, gender, female, and then foster care involvement. Let's do in foster care before. You report, and then you get a table, 2 tables, one for each group that you created. And you can see the total number of surveys completed by young people who fall within those parameters that you selected up top, as well as the mean scores for each of the protective and promotive factors. There are a couple more reports here, but before I go to those, if all of these canned reports are still not quite what you're looking for, you want to do something different, you want to do something more sophisticated, you can do a data pull. So let's go back to the main menu and let's look at the data download feature. This is something that's available to organizational administrators and state administrators, not for caseworkers or other user level staff. So to download the data, if you're an organization, you would select January 1st, 2018. So you set the date parameters that you'd like to use. Let's just do for all of 2018. And then your state, if you're an organizational admin, and your organization name will be set. And then you click on the table below, and that'll generate a file that you can open up in Excel. And let's see, can you move it over? Sorry. We're navigating multiple screens here on our end, so. Oh, okay, great, thank you. Sorry, I was just reminded that this feature actually is available to workers as well. So thank you for that note. Okay, so here's this the survey data download, and you'll see this is just a flat Excel file with it includes the worker ID at the beginning, responses, both in text and numeric format throughout, and then at the very end, you can also see the survey taker's ID. So if you're keeping good track of the survey taker ID, and you keep track of it in such a way that you can actually match these to other administrative data files that you have, you can even merge these data with other information that you have on young people to run even more complex analyses that answer the very specific questions that you're looking to get out of the data. So those are all the ways to get data out of the system. Now, a couple of other reports that I want to show you. So there are two at the top, registered organizations and registered organizations within a state. These will show you all the organizations who have registered to use the UThrive survey, in case you're curious, in case you want to know if your young people are enrolled with anyone, or maybe working with any other organizations that are using the survey already and you want to avoid duplication of effort. You can just take a look at this report and look at my example right here, Pennsylvania. You can click on the plus sign next to any of these states, and you can see the organizations within the state. So this gives you a breakdown, the number of organizations within each state that are using or registered to use a survey. So right now we see in the system with 24 registered. It also breaks down the organization not just by state, but also by the population using the survey, the purpose for using the survey, and the frequency of survey administration. Now, if you want to see that information just for your state, you click on the next report, registered organizations within the state. And it's a similar report. Now you can just see the specific organizations within each of those categories that I mentioned before. Okay. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of this system. So I think we're going to open it up to questions.
Yes. Thank you very much, Erica. So there's been a lot of questions that have been coming in, and I've been doing my best to respond to some of them. And some of them I've been asking folks to hold for this Q&A session that we're about to open up. And so, yes, please ask any question that you have. And also, what we'd like is for you to share your thinking on how you plan on implementing the survey with the young people that you work with. So we'll open it up at this point. You can feel free to either type in the question and I could read it out loud, or just raise your hand as Katie did earlier, and then we will unmute you. So I will kick it off with one question that I see that has come in. So the question is, there's a lot of questions coming in. Okay, hold on one second. If different state level admins sign on, for example, State of Department of Education or from the Juvenile Justice Rep, will all of their information be aggregated into a single set of data, or will they be able to keep their respondents separate?
The answer would be that if there is, for each agency, you'd be able to access the data at the state level. So if it's a child welfare agency, an admin at the child welfare agency would be able to access all of the data for the child welfare system. If multiple agencies within a state are using it, you could appoint someone at the governor's level or someone who crosses over, you know, a human service council or whatever, to look at data across agencies.
Yeah, I think for that level of access, though, as I mentioned before, for any state level administrator, you need to work with CSSP to figure out that access. So it would be sort of an offline conversation about that kind of arrangement.
But it is possible, but just reach out to us and we can work through that. All right. The next question is, how can we find out who is registered in our state to connect with them?
So this sounds like a state, if there's a state administrator and they want to know which organizations are registered, then that's where the last report that I showed you, so the registered organizations within a state, that's where you can take a look to see who the different organizations are that are registered within your particular state.
Okay. The next question is, can you query the data by expectant and parenting status? Unfortunately, while that is a great question, that is not something that we included as part of the demographics, and so unfortunately at this time it's not possible to be able to do that.
That said, if you know that information and have it from a separate data set, you can download the data, link them together using because you've been doing a good job of tracking the survey taker IDs, link them together and then run those data separately on your own.
There's been a couple questions related to this, and so it's related to the development of the survey and how the conceptualization and operationalization of well-being was decided on. And so I'll take a first stab, and then I'll call on my fellow colleagues to respond to that. And so we identified the Youth Thrive protective and promotive factors as proxy indicators of well-being, and this was supported by the research literature on resiliency and neuroscience and positive youth development. And so that is how we conceptualize and operationalize well-being, is through these protective and the Youth Thrive protective and promotive factors. And so the items within the survey are characteristics and competencies related to each one of these protective and promotive factors.
That's correct. And hi, this is Michael. The items that were drawn for this this item bank were actually drawn from several surveys and instruments that are out there that have been validated. So we're actually utilizing items that reflect the things that we want to measure that would then went through a validation process.
And please let me know if that does not answer the question for any of the responses that we've been providing. And this is another question that has come up a couple of times, which is, can you use a single email address for multiple usernames as a way for workers to be able to manage all the usernames for all the young people that they're working with? And I believe that yes, you can use one email address for multiple unique usernames.
For survey takers.
For survey takers.
That's right.
Is there guidance on how to address the results? If a score is low in one section, what are the recommended remedies to increase that particular score? So there is a little bit of guidance in the manual in terms of how to view the results and how to communicate the results, particularly with young people. And it's really important to understand that, this is a youth self-report and that they are responding to the statements based on their current circumstances, their current situation, what they're experiencing at that point in time, and that is likely to change. And that the goal is how to identify, again, the presence of these protective and promotive factors to inform how they can be further strengthened. So, for example, if based on the responses from the young person, it seems that they really don't have many social connections. They don't have any supports in place. They're very much disconnected. They're not connected to their school community or their neighborhood, and so that would help inform how to best support this young person into building those support networks or building or strengthening relationships that currently exist.
That's great. Thank you, Lisa. And the other thing that I think one of the things we found when we were doing the field testing of the instrument was that young people were reporting that they really liked being asked these questions because, first of all, they were largely strength-based, and it provides, by having the young person report on on how they feel they're doing on a particular question or issue, it engages them and it allows them to open up, which can allow for a conversation, a discussion, and an opportunity between the caseworker and the young person to explore an issue further. Like, why do you think this is going on? What can we do to strengthen this? So.
All right. Another question that also has come up is, can we use pieces of or items from the survey to create to include within surveys that we're currently using in our organization or to meet the specific needs of our organization?
You certainly can. The instrument itself has been validated as a total instrument, so the 66 items in the instrument have been validated as one questionnaire. You can certainly borrow items from the instrument and use them in your own, but you would have to revalidate those items.
Do you have to have the Youth Thrive training to be able to implement the survey?
No, you don't. No, you don't. But we would very much encourage you to learn more and to become even more proficient in understanding what goes behind all of what the research behind these protective and promotive factors. But no, you do not have to have had the training.
So this has also been, a few questions have come up about this. Is the survey available in other languages? And at this time, it is only available in English, but we hope to learn over the next year what the specific language needs are, and then we will make a decision depending on need to translate the survey into other languages. Is there a way to create survey user accounts in a bulk, batch, or in an automated way?
One at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have to be created
on an individual basis, yeah.
And the idea behind this is that this is something that's being created like with the young person as you're explaining what the survey is about and through conversation with them. And so it should be on a one-on-one basis. Has this been tested with a program intervention to see if an intervention has had an effect? And the answer to that is no. This is brand new. We've just released this to the field on October 30th, but it is our hope that organizations, programs, or systems will use it in that way. And it is our hope to learn from that and then share all of the lessons learned from that with the field. Who owns the data entered? Is CSSP the host, but organizations entering the data retain ownership of the data?
Ownership?
So CSSP only owns the de-identified data. And so as you can see from the survey, if you had a chance to look at it, there are no identifying information. And so CSSP will own and hold all de-identified data from the survey. Organizations have all of, also have this data and own it in a sense as well as all the identified data that CSSP does not have access to. So I guess to answer the question more clearly, both the organization as well as CSSP own the de-identified data, and only the organization owns the identified data. What gaps in other instruments are addressed by the survey?
Well, I think this survey is specifically geared towards measuring the strengths and the presence and strength of what the research says are the protective and promotive factors that really are indicators or help provide a pathway to well-being, and that are shown by the research to reduce and mitigate risks that young people experience. So in that sense, it is the first ever instrument that is actually measuring the relative strength and presence of the protective and promotive factors.
And what I would add to that is that it's one of a small number of instruments that measure positive constructs. If youth and staff are meeting in the field and the youth does not have any access to the internet, can the survey be administered in paper form and later entered at the office?
Yeah, that's fine. The survey can also be, I know this is internet access, it can be administered on a mobile device as well as a computer in your office, so that could be an option too. But yes, it's perfectly fine to use a paper version of the survey and enter it later.
As long as you keep track of username, so you can enter on the.
Correct. Yeah, just make sure you label the paper survey so that you know who took it for entry later on.
And you have to know login information for this young person as well. But yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Okay, I think those have been the questions that have been coming in. Please let us know if you'd like to verbally ask a question. And what we will do is we have a list of all these questions, and there's been a lot that have been coming in all at once, so I apologize if there's some that have been missed. What we will do is we will look at all of these questions and develop an FAQ document that we can put online in support of all of you implementing it. I'm curious if there are any jurisdictions, and also if Georgia is on the line with us, that just want to share their thinking for how they plan on using the survey. Okay. Well, we will create opportunities, you know, as folks spend some time looking through the manual and thinking through this. We will create opportunities within the next year for peer exchange so that different systems can discuss in organizations the different ways that they're using it and learn from each other. And we will also be reaching out to all the folks who are using it to learn and then share that information back to the field.
And do feel, you know, free to give Lisa a call as you're implementing it, as you have questions or as you have suggestions. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, I do have one other question. Can the user ID be assigned by the system or the organization? Because if the organization or system can assign it, it can make the explorable data easier to analyze with other organizational data sets. It would be great, Jamie, if you can actually ask that question and just add a little bit more, because we're not exactly clear on what the ask is. Is it okay if we unmute you? All right, Jamie, you're now unmuted. Is it okay if you just ask your question verbally?
You're still self-muted, Jamie, so you have to unmute yourself as well.
If the system assigns the user ID number, or can the organization assign one? And if the organization can assign one, for example, our organization has, each youth has a unique identifier. And so if we could input it into the Youth Thrive database, when we pull that data, it'd be easier for us to analyze it across our other data sets that use that same unique user ID.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, you can use whatever whatever scheme you need to, or would be appropriate for you to create usernames and passwords. So the system doesn't auto-generate the usernames. You come up with it yourself, or work with a young person to come up with it. The only guidance there is just don't use an identifier that will make the young person identifiable to someone at the state level or CSSP.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Another question has come in. Will there be a training video? So to answer that, we're hoping that this webinar can serve that purpose. However, if there are additional requests, specifically for systems or organizations that want to roll it out statewide, please reach out to me, and then we can follow up to make sure that all your staff have all the necessary information to be able to implement it. And so we are at 4 o'clock. So we're going to quickly close. Again, you have the opportunity to reach out to CSSP, reach out to me, Lisa Primus, with any additional questions. And you please visit our website where you can access the survey, as well as a plethora of, I cannot talk today, of resources and information specific to the Youth Thrive framework and the Youth Thrive protective and promotive factors. Following the webinar, you will receive a brief evaluation survey. We really appreciate your feedback. And I'm going to turn it over. A special thank you to all the our presenters and to Metis Associates. And in case, my email is everywhere, but if you don't have it, I will give it to you. It's lisa.primus@cssp.org. Thank you all very much.